Welcome to eGenes, Life Evolution Simulator. This simulator is based on Charles Darwin theory of evolution by natural selection. The theory of evolution by natural selection describes how organisms mutate and evolve over generations through the inheritance of physical or behavioral traits. Individuals with traits that enable them to adapt to their environments will help them survive and have more offspring, which will inherit those traits. Individuals with less adaptive traits will less frequently survive to pass them on. Over time, the traits that enable species to survive and reproduce will become more frequent in the population. So, let's get started. This is the new game menu. Here you can configure the simulation parameters. From the top to bottom, the first parameter is the size of the map. The second parameter is the amount of plants. The third parameter is the amount of herbivores. The fourth parameter is the amount of carnivores. The fifth parameter is the amount of omnivores. The sixth parameter is the mutation chance. The mutation chance is the chance for a new offspring to mutate a trait, or in this case, let's call it a gene. And the seventh and last parameter is the game mode. Currently we only have spectator mode available, but I will add more in the future. So, let's start our simulation. This is our simulation. Let's take a look at our ecosystem. The current map is a basic square island, but I will upgrade it in the future. All plants start as seeds, and all creatures start as eggs. Every plant and creature has a unique name. This name never changes and will be inherited by future generations. Now, let's take a look at this plant called David. Click on a plant, creature or meat to open the statistics window. From top to bottom, the plant statistics window displays the following details. The current generation. When the last mutation happened. The state of the plant. The age of the plant. The maturity stage. Current and maximum health. Healing per day. Current and maximum growth. Growth rate per day. The current and maximum reproduction. And finally, the genes. Placing the mouse arrow over a gene icon will display all the details about that specific gene. From left to right, the first gene is the size. This gene varies between 1 and 4 and affects the maximum growth of the plant. Bigger plants take longer to grow and reproduce, but also have a higher chance to reproduce. The second gene is the color. This gene affects the plant color. There are 9 colors available. The third gene is the biome. This gene varies between 1 and 5 and affects where the plant is more fertile. Some plants are more fertile on the far left side, others on the far right and others in between. The fourth gene is the health bonus. This gene varies between 0 and 10 and affects the maximum health of the plant. The fifth gene is the healing. This gene can vary between 0 and 10 and affects the health regeneration. The sixth gene is the poison. This gene can vary between 0 and 10. Herbivores with weak antidote gene will become poisoned after eating this plant. The seventh gene is the seed spread range. This gene varies between 0 and 10 and affects the dispersal distance of the seeds. The eighth gene is the toughness. This gene varies between 0 and 10 and affects the hardness of the plant, making it more difficult to chew. And the ninth and last gene is the thorns. This gene varies between 0 and 10. Herbivores with weak toughness gene may take damage after eating this plant. After taking damage they will avoid it. Now if you're wondering if plants will just evolve all genes to the maximum level, the answer is no, because most genes reduce the growth rate and the reproduction speed. Now let's take a look at the creatures. Eugene right there, looks like a good candidate. From top to bottom, the creature statistics window displays the following details. The current generation. When the last mutation happened. The state of the creature. The current action of the creature. The age of the creature. The maturity stage. Current and maximum health. Healing per day. Current and maximum energy. Current and maximum fat. Current and maximum growth. Growth rate per day. The current and maximum reproduction. And finally, the genes. Creatures have two types of genes, physical genes and behavior genes. Physical genes have a green background and behavior genes have a red background. From left to right, the first physical gene is the size. This gene varies between 1 and 4 and affects the maximum growth of the creature. Bigger creatures take longer to grow and reproduce, but also have a higher chance to reproduce. The second gene is the color. This gene affects the creature color. There are 9 colors available. The third gene is the diet. Creatures can be herbivores, carnivores, or omnivores. The fourth gene is the mouth. There are 3 mouths. The herbivorous mouth is very good for chewing plants, the carnivorous mouth is very good for chewing meat, and the omnivore mouth is average in both. The fifth gene is the eyes. This gene can vary between 1 and 10 and affects the view range. The sixth gene is the legs. This gene can vary between 0 and 10 and affects the walk and run speed. The seventh gene is the antidote. This gene can vary between 0 and 10 and allows creatures to eat poisonous plants and rotten meat. The eighth gene is the health bonus. This gene varies between 0 and 10 and affects the maximum health of the plant. The ninth gene is the healing. This gene can vary between 0 and 10 and affects the health regeneration. The 10th gene is the combat. This gene can vary between 0 and 10 and affects the combat effectiveness. The 11th gene is the camouflage. This gene can vary between 0 and 10 and makes the creature harder to see. The 12th gene is the toughness. This gene varies between 0 and 10. Toughness allows creatures to eat plants with thorns and reduce damage taken during combat. Now let's take a look at the behavior genes. The first behavior gene is the migration direction. The second behavior gene is the hunting. This gene only affects carnivores and omnivores. The third behavior gene is the courage. This gene affects the chance to panic during combat. The fourth behavior gene affects the colors this creature can eat. Some physical genes reduce the growth rate and the reproduction speed and increase energy consumption. Now, let's run a simulation. Let's increase the mutation rate to 25%. Once again, we'll follow our main actor, Eugene. Eugene is now looking for his first meal. Let's zoom in so we can get a better view of our main actor. He just ignored the white plant because of the behavior gene that affects the colors the creatures like to eat. Looks like Eugene found his first meal, a giant yellow broccoli. Because he's not hungry anymore, he's sitting next to the broccoli. Let's increase the game speed. Eugene is now a grown-up adult. Now instead of growing, he will start reproducing. Looks like the yellow broccoli thorn scared Eugene away. He found a yellow pumpkin. Looks like he enjoys eating yellow foods. Eugene successfully laid his first egg. Let's take a look at his offspring. His offspring haven't mutated at all. Eugene and his offspring are now migrating to get more food. Eugene just laid another egg. This one mutated the behavior gene that affects the migration direction. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This herd of Eugenes is having a hard time finding food. Fat is consumed when energy gets below zero. Once fat runs out, the creature will starve to death. Our ecosystem is getting huge. If you take a look at top left corner, you can see that some herbivores already mutated into carnivores and omnivores. This Eugene mutated the migration direction. So many families migrating. Oh, I don't see any Eugenes. Did they go extinct? Looks like the main actor of our movie got extinct. It's sad, but the show has to continue. This creature is a carnivore, but doesn't have hunting behavior. This means that this creature is a scavenger that only eats dead creatures. This one is also a scavenger. You can zoom in and zoom out using the plus and minus buttons at the top right corner. In the top right corner, you can also adjust the simulation speed. By the way, creatures don't eat seeds or eggs. Looks like all carnivores evolved into scavengers. All genetic mutations are totally randomized. Individuals with genes that enable them to adapt to their environments will help them survive and have more offspring. Individuals with less adaptive genes will less frequently survive. For example, if plants in a region start developing the poison gene, then the nearby herbivores with a strong antidote gene will survive better than herbivores with the weak antidote gene. In this world, only the fittest will survive. In the next major update, I want to add two things: an option to save and load, and a mutation log inside the statistics window. Thank you for watching. Hope that you have enjoyed the video. The simulator download link is in the description. Please give it a try and share your feedback in the comments.